Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm honored to be with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Ernest Johnson. I met him many moons ago when I was a school librarian at the North Carolina Center for the Advancement of Teaching. And Dr. Johnson joined NCAT in 2003. So he supports teachers in North Carolina. He has developed and facilitated professional development programs such as Reaching Reluctant Readers, Bringing Boys to Books, which is where I met him. He has written several publications. The book I'm reading now is The Secrets of Motivating, Educating, and Lifting the Spirit of African American Males. And Dr. Johnson has mentored numerous youth to become active thinkers and engaged citizens. He holds a PhD in clinical health psychology from the University of South Florida. And so I'm going to use some words to describe my guest because he is a friend, a dear friend. I would say that Ernest is empathetic. He is thoughtful. He is a teacher, but he is also a robust learner. And of course, he's kind. A little surprise fact that you might not know about Dr. Johnson, he is bordering, I think, on a master gardener. I mean, you see these vegetables that he grows and these dishes that he makes, and it's mouthwatering. And him and his wife, Maddie, are also Broadway play aficionados. They're probably a little saddened right now with the closure of Broadway for a while, but we can all watch Hamilton on Disney Plus or through library resources. So that's always awesome. So thank you for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about your work and, the main purpose of what you do at NCAT?
Well, what I do, thank you, Roberta, for having me with you. What I do for our state, because NCAT is a state agency, serves teachers from every district across our whole state. And so what I do here is I create, develop, and put in place programs that are aimed at the best ways to motivate disengaged students, hard to reach learners. And that's the work that I do here for our state. We do all of this work up until the pandemic. Our work was done predominantly in residence. So a teacher would come in residence and be with us for 3 days, away from the distractions of school, where I like to say, I've got them now captive. They're with me now to be molded up, not just by me, but by other presenters as well, so that we could really get to do the work, not just doing the content or of a morning, but when they would sit around the table at dinner or lunch and dinner in the after evening hours, where they would just continue to talk. There's some groups of teachers where we start in the morning at 8 and we're formally done by 4 or 5 p.m. and have a little supper. But there have been some groups where they want to continue to talk well into the night about challenges, how to do things, how to make things better for themselves and their peers and their students. So it's like an organic sort of thing that happens, and it grows, and the teachers walk away feeling mesmerized by this experience.
Absolutely. I can attest to that. It is like camp for teachers, but like this level that is so amazing. And education is the key to what libraries do as well as teachers. We like to work with students in so many multiple ways. I think some of the things that are happening now in our society kind of come back to systemic injustices that Black, Indigenous, and persons of color face in the American education system, which is why the focus for you is getting those students who are disengaged or have been forgotten even, or reluctant, because nobody has told them, you can do this. You can you can be whatever you want to be. And so, how does that play out in education and what's happening in our communities?
You're at a point there where it's a very sensitive issue, because the issue is not the books, it's not about the lessons, it's not even about the school that you're in. The lesson is up here, the mindset of that teacher. And I know that teachers today, educators today, use loosely that term mindset. But if you can't get your story right about why you are doing what you're doing, then it doesn't really matter about what strategies or what books, whatever you're going to put in front of a kid. It's your story about why are you there. I'm going to say it. I'm going to go ahead and cross these lines. Why are you there as a white teacher, as a white woman in a school that's predominantly Black? If the only reason you're there it's for your job, that's your story. That's part of the narrative, and that will show up in your relationship and your interactions with kids. So teachers who are out on the field have to, go deep into the reasons why they're there. So what's happened over the years is that teaching has become just the job for a lot of people, not the calling to execute what it is that I have in my heart about how I want to serve humanity. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's a shift in the attitude and the reasons why I am there, why that teacher is there. And along with that have come a whole lot of other problems about how we have good relationships with kids, how we develop trusting and authentic relationships with parents. So it's not about racism per se, it's about what's in the mindset of the person in front of the class and their reasons for being there. So we've got a whole lot of people who are there who are doing a whole lot of damage to the profession, to their peers, and to students, because the reason for being there is it's got to be more than just a job.
Right. And, for me, when I was a teacher and even now as a librarian and a leader, I think it's about building those relationships.
Yeah.
If you don't have the relationships with your students, with your kids, they know it. Yeah. They know that you're a fraud. They know that you're just in there, to fill up space. They know that you don't have their back. And so, that's the beauty of building those relationships and that trust. And again, if you have those relationships, being white or Black doesn't have to be a barrier to those kids.
It transcends that. And then we see ethnicity is what it is. It's just, that's who I am. That's what I do, and my ethnicity and my color walks in with me. And Colin Powell said before we elected a Black president, when he was Secretary of State, in his job there, he says he was on an interview and the person says, when you walk in a room, do they see you as a Black man? He says, of course they see me as a Black man. But I hope they get beyond that real fast and see that I represent all the power of the United States.
Right.
Yeah. And I think this is what we have to see with a teacher, that it's not about Black or white or whatever. I hope that we get to the point where my students see me as representing all the power that get you to have a life.
Yeah. That's how you overcome some other things that might not be in your control as a teacher, right? I think, you could talk a lot about the links between education, literacy, and overcoming systemic injustices, right?
Well, that you're being a librarian, what I'm going to say about part of what you would know what I want to say about that. When you look at this publishing world, and who owns it and who works in it, and there's a program I do called Multicultural Issues in Children's Literacy. And I thought, rather than me tell the teachers about the publishing world, why did I get a representative from the publishing world to tell the teachers that it's all white, everything's white, every decision is made by white folks, half the books out there at a time that were written and included something about Black people were written by white folks.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And let them hear this kind of a thing. So part of the injustice starts with the materials we got in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And it doesn't really matter if that teacher is Black or white. A Black teacher doesn't know. I don't know everything about Blackness. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm not the expert on everything Black. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's impossible. So part of what you do, part of what's got to be done is to recognize the biases that are there in print.
Right.
Okay. In print. Now we got other media forms as well. We see movies, videos, and things like that. Hollywood helps us out like it's been doing with Hamilton on Disney. I mean, it's not just about our guy there, but it's really about the people. It's really about the multicultural nature of the people that I think Lynn wanted folks to see. Okay,
right.
More so than the story of Alexander Hamilton,
right,
and that kind of thing. In our books, we got to see images of each other, and not just a Black kid seeing images of kids who are Black and stories about Blackness, but that white kid who reads the same thing develops a different kind of empathy, a different kind of understanding, not pity, and empathy and understanding and emotional closeness. These kind of things we need to do early on. And even before a kid shows up, mom and dad looking at these kind of books and reading aloud to their kids. More of this in our schools we need to do. So we got to be sensitive about what's in front of kids because kids believe the words. So how did I get into all of this? I'm going to kind of spring back a little bit. How did I get into all of this? Because I do have a doctorate in clinical health psychology. Now, my psychology department at University of South Florida was next to the education department. Okay. And they were always talking about being out in the field. Okay. So as an undergraduate, I thought, wow, I want to get out in the field too and go do some things. Well, there was something called community psychology. Okay. And I thought, that's it. I could get to go and do some things out in the field. So I thought, I want to study to be a community psychologist. And I was working with the top community psychologists in the whole nation, and there was this van, a big bus, the University of South Florida Community Psychology bus that would go into the community. And I thought that was pretty cool. So I was invited to stay there as a graduate student. Don't apply to any place else. You want to do it, you're serious, stay here. We'll shape you up. But I thought, those people over there in the education department do some cool things. So I developed a project as a first-year graduate student that would go into the public schools of Tampa, Florida, Hillsborough County, to modify an entire unit of study about health and wellness. And not just for one school, but 14 different schools. And I got permission to bring my team. So by then, the bus was gone. So we had a van, our community psychology van. We would show up and we would do this unit. And the kids were just mesmerized by having college kids in there with them, talking with them and doing things with them and showing things with them and measuring this and talking about health. And what happened for us, something that changed my life, was a note that had to go home to the parent, to the child. And that note basically said to the mother parent at the house, do you know how important it is to get your blood pressure checked? All it said. And there's this person, Ernest Johnson, who just wants you to know that he loves you, that he cares about you, and that if you don't get your blood pressure checked, he's going to come out of here and talk with you about the reasons why. Wow, that kind of connection. So it was psychology moving into ed in an active way to transform something that was happening in class. And I just essentially continued with that model. So that's how I came here to NCAT. I was invited in. The NCAT faculty basically said, he saw me give a talk in Atlanta. Over there, I was a full professor in a medical school. And he said, to me on the phone. He said, "Have you ever thought about leveraging a little bit more of your thoughts through teachers?
Mm-hmm.
We want you to come to North Carolina to do that." So that's how I got here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting because, I'm dating myself, but of course, when I learned to read, it was Dick and Jane and
Yeah.
Spot and, and even when I taught, and when I went to your seminar, I struggled to find literature that did not come from a white perspective. I think it's starting to change now. I think we're getting better. I'm sure most of the publishing companies are still run by white folks, but I think it's starting to make a turn because we're understanding how important it is for kids to see themselves in what they read and to expose children to different ways of thoughts, different ways of living, different family structures, all of those things that, like you said, build empathy and help you start in a way that maybe diminishes your biases. By the time you get to our age, it's kind of baked in and it's hard to dig them out and get rid of them. But if you get those kids when they're young and they learn these things at a young age, I think that's really critical.
Well, yeah. And new models for us, there's the formal route to publishing a book. There's that formal route,
Mm-hmm.
Those routes are kind of bending quite a bit, There's a little girl, I haven't met her yet here, but I read about her last summer. And she was promoting her second book. She's just a 9-year-old Black girl.
Mm-hmm.
Her second book, so that was self-published.
Right.
And, there's a story about the little girl who got tired of people touching her hair. So someone said, "Well, why don't you write a book about what your hair is all about?" So she wrote a book and won an award for like $18,000.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if she's going to continue to be a publisher or not, a writer or not. I don't know if you were in the program where the two little boys from Atlanta were with us. It may have been later that I brought them in.
I don't think so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My grandma's backyard. Okay. Mm. And the little book that they had written it with over the summer, one summer, because they were bored. And grandma says, "You can't see in the house all summer. Get outside, go play in the garden." Mm-hmm. So they wrote a book about being outside in grandma's garden. And these are young men now out in the world. This book took them around the world.
Wow.
This book paid for college, So those adventures, publishing adventures for a whole lot of people, they're circles of young Black writers of children's books, for example. Some of those books will never make it mainstream. We'll never see them in libraries, but a whole lot of folks are seeing them online through other means these days. So, there are other avenues to get those images out into the hearts, not just of Black parent and that Black kid or that Hispanic parent or Hispanic kids, but even the teachers of kids. And half the books in our multicultural program that we have on display when teachers in residence, most of those have been self-published by some author someplace. Mm-hmm. Just would never see them,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about why it's important for the community to focus on educational systems and literacy in conjunction with our Black Lives Matter and our civil rights movements.
Well, there's a parallel to this. And the parallel I'm going to throw up is diabetes. Okay. You're going to think, wait a minute, what is he talking about? Let me go there for a minute.
Okay.
Now, we have a whole lot of diabetics, kids with diabetes these days because of obesity, bad diets, and everything else. Mm-hmm. If we don't curb this, they will bankrupt the nation. Just this one disorder, dealing with it across a lifetime. Got it? We got kids who can't read. We got kids who are not in love with school. They drop out, or we can see the negative consequences of that. But being a kid who's just unmotivated to just learn does a whole lot of things. There's a cycle that we enter into that also becomes very expensive. Not everybody who can't read ends up in prison. Okay?
Right.
That's something crazy. but I can assure you that there's not too many people who can't read, who are, let me use the term, um, tax creators. And
Mm-hmm.
by this I mean they got a good job
Mm-hmm.
and they make a lot of money and they're
Mm-hmm.
paying taxes, you know. But a whole lot of those people who can't read, they become tax eaters. We
Mm-hmm.
end up paying for them somehow paying for things for them throughout a lifetime. And that's expensive to this nation. So a whole lot of it is integrated, and I'm going to say it like I need to. It focuses on money and
Mm-hmm.
resources.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to actually fix a problem, we're going to solve a whole lot of problems. If we didn't spend in our state here in North Carolina, if we didn't spend nearly $38,000 per year
Mm-hmm.
on keeping somebody locked up, 38,000 per year times 1,000 people, that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot. That's a lot of green.
Right.
Times 2,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people we got locked up in our state, but I think it's more than 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5,000 times 38,000.
Mm-hmm.
If we could divert all of that into school, into
Mm-hmm.
programming, boy, what could we do for society?
Mm-hmm.
So not all of those people who were locked up, though, had problems in school. Some of them are there because of biases of the law and everything else. But for me, the way I see it, Roberta, is that it all convolutes into this thing called money, capital. What having capital to support ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and the kind of things we need to do to give people a life. Jim Goodnight over at the CEO of SAS was asked once. He said, "Well, wait a minute. Are you saying that with STEM, science, technology, education, engineering, and math, that if we can't get kids to really become better readers, then how can they have a career in STEM?" And he said, "Yes, that's what I'm saying." And then he was asked, "But a whole lot of the folks that you have working over in SAS are from other nations, okay, representing other ethnicities." And he says, "That's the truth." He says, "Here in this country, if there's going to be a way to just leverage out everything, all the issues that's going on, and solve them, it's going to be through education. And reading has got to be the way to lift up people through careers." And that's why I do the programs on helping teachers define it, not just books and getting strategies to motivate the kids, but even the resources sometimes. How do you find the capital, the grants to really bring in the resources that you really need into a classroom? I find myself every week with a teacher or two in a private session about how to go find it, where to go look.
Well, of course, promote the library is a fabulous resource.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think is important too that our library, and I'm sure many other libraries are doing, is we have the Books from Birth program through the Dolly Parton Foundation. You sign up, your child from 0 to 5 gets a free book every month in their home. You build this home library and this love of reading and this family time. And that's creating this base for them before they even go to school. They're getting ready. They're curious. They want to know more because they're being exposed to these things.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of the solution. But there's something else. There's another fundamental set of skills that we don't teach, and that is teaching a kid how to think about their own thinking, how to really value their own creativity.
Absolutely.
We don't do this, and that critical thinking stuff, we do a little bit better with, collaboration, but we don't teach it. We just go, y'all have to work together.
Yeah, right.
You're just kind of by default, you got to do something, and those kind of things. But that kind of critical thinking stuff, though, we don't. Now, it was probably after you came, our connection there at NCAT, where I just thought, we don't have anything on our books about teaching kids chess. I don't even know how to create a program for it, but I'm not going to wait for anything. And then I thought, this is something I've been doing with kids since I was a senior in high school, providing them ways to play the game of chess. So I have no research on this, but I can my own stuff. But I can assure you that the boys, every boy that I've mentored, plays chess,
Mm-hmm.
and they're playing now chess with their babies at the house. Which is
Mm-hmm.
fascinating.
Yeah.
And when I look at the profile of some of these boys, didn't know their daddy, born, living in deep poverty with a grandma, but wow, they found a way to think about their thinking, and then
Mm-hmm.
that transferred into what they were doing in school.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them didn't become straight A students, but they knew how to think about their lessons. You
Mm-hmm.
know, keeping a reading a book every week, and keeping a journal about that book, not about the characters and the place and space, but the answers to two questions. What in that book Was there anything in that book that can provide you information about how you can become a better person?
Mm-hmm.
And the second question, how is that different than the last book that you read?
Mm.
You know, you gotta think.
Right.
Gotta
And with that critical thinking, there's a ownership of your learning.
yeah, yeah,
And once students, I think I've seen the light bulb literally go off with students who are like, this is what I'm interested in. I can learn anything I want about it, can I? And I'm like, of course you can. And it's that idea that this is my life to create.
yeah.
And you know, some kids are going to have bigger obstacles than others, but that
Mm.
doesn't mean that they can't create that life that they want.
You gotta give them opportunity to just think big, real
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
Yeah, something a strategy that I stole from Mark Victor Hansen, the Chicken Soup from the Soul guy. Something called writing out your list of 101 things that are most important for you. There's a whole story about how that came into my life that I'll tell you some other time.
Mm-hmm.
But so for all the boys, I give them a journal. They get a journal. And the first activity in the journal is, I want you to write down 101 things that you want to do in your life. Don't worry about what your teacher wants. Don't worry about what your mama wants.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you want, people you want to go, places, whatever, what you want. They go, anything? I go, yes. When they say this, can I put anything? I've given them permission to honor their own thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It can be anything. And they go, wow, I can get this done in an hour. Most of them can't get it done in an hour. 2, 3, 4 days later, okay, let's talk again.
Mm-hmm.
And after about 50, 60 things on the list, I would always get the call. Is 50 enough?
Mm-hmm.
I got no, because the magic hasn't happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
After you get about 50 or 60, then you begin to think about items on your list. So I already got them reading a list and rereading. I already got them reading.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And thinking about what they've been writing. Oh boy, when they get that list of 101 things, Roberta, this is where the magic goes. To sort that stuff out, which is one of the hardest things even adults have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Sort out their thinking into categories.
Right.
There's fun things, there's educational things, there's economic things, there might be family things, whatever the categories are that we come up with, to sort out this. I'm not going to help the kid,
Mm-hmm.
but I let them do this themselves because they're now looking at their own life.
Mm-hmm.
Not the life that their mama wants, not the life of a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah,
empowerment is like it's something. Yeah.
Take responsibility for
Yes.
your life early on. Now, you can't do this with a kid who's in 4th or 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
You can get them to think about their academic stuff in those grades. Same way, a list of 30 things that you could do to become a better student.
Right.
Narrow the list down. And have them work on it that way. But in the schools, in our process of educating a child, we don't deal with things like this. Teaching this kid how to really think, how to really organize what's in their own head.
So are there any noticeable differences in how teachers and administrators differ in their approach to the issue of how you teach, because we have, millennial teachers versus educators who have taught for 25 years. And it's like, listen, I know the way. I've been in the trenches. I know how it goes. And I think, there's so many approaches now to teaching kids and what's the best method. And of course, during the pandemic, we're all trying to figure this out, of course, because we can't bring them physically to a school. So,
yeah. Well, back in the day when we had the van,
yeah.
back in graduate school, well, the van stopped working. It just wouldn't start. So we take it into the shop. And he goes, well, I don't know. It's the starter. It's the battery. Let's change those things. And then it would work. The next morning, it wouldn't work again. Okay. And this went on for several weeks. And so we took it into a new place. And the guy goes, aha, I know the problem. I said, man, we've had it all over town. He says, yeah, but you haven't had it here to me. He says, I've experienced exactly what this problem is. And it's going to cost you exactly 30 cents to repair it. He says, here in Florida, and this particular model of this van, there's the ignition wire. There's a wire, a little wire, that the salt air erodes that wire. So here's a seasoned teacher who's been around the block for a few minutes, if you know what I mean. They've seen a few things. They know what to do. But we don't have them talking a lot with young people, okay, who are fresh off the boat. I'm here, I'm a teacher, and you follow what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So I think this model of mentorship, we talk about it, but we don't really do it. If you hear what I'm saying,
yeah,
we don't do it with a way. I would imagine having a mentor, a Black teacher, having a mentor who's white, who's been around the block a few times, say, let me show you something. And then flip it around, having a young white teacher who's got a mentor who's Hispanic, who says, let me tell you something. I would imagine there's so much power, so much that young beginning teacher can learn from that, and we didn't do it. We talked about it. We brought in that seasoned person to give them a talk now and then.
Right.
But that apprenticeship relationship, when I have a youngster call me up to say, Doc, listen, one of my boys went through college, got a bachelor's, got out, got a master's, and was working for a bank, making a lot of money. He calls me up. He says, I'm in the wrong job. I said, all that we took to get you through? He says, yeah, this is not what I want to do. He says, I missed that lesson when we were doing that list of 101. There's something I wasn't honest about. He says, that I always love working with my hands. That's what I want to do. So he stopped the job at the bank, geared up 2 years ago to know everything about repairing air conditioning and heating systems for homes, where he can be outside doing his own thing. Last tax season, when Winston calls me up, a few days before filing taxes, he says, Doc, he says, guess how much money we made this year? Doing this my way. I said, how much? He says, almost $200,000. He says, I didn't miss anything. He says, I didn't miss anything, but what I've gained is my self-respect and value that I have about who I am as a man. And those are the kind of things that we don't see happening. Those mentoring relationships where it goes on. Even our administrators who are out there, who's giving them a little advice, about how to do this thing. We have a revolving door there as well. People coming and going, only at a school for 2 years or 3 years, and then they get moved to another school, not because they are doing the right thing, but because there's nobody to fill in at the other school. And we can get somebody here, So those kind of things, I think, are crucial. We've overlooked the value of them. And when you think about the young ones, what I would get every now and then from a young teacher about working with someone who's of another ethnicity is, well, I had a course about that in college. And well, that's good that you had a course, but tell me about who you had over for dinner the other night. And who you went to church with, and who you get on the phone with now and then to talk about life and living
Mhm.
the pursuit of happiness,
Sure.
and I've got some colleagues now who are, oh, they've got to have this talk with me about race. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, hold on, wait a minute. It's not now. We're doing something just very reactionary. I'm glad a door is open, but let's not just stop now. Let this be a start to something that we should have done a long time ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that, word pivot that keeps coming into my mind. Like, this is an opportunity to pivot. And how do libraries and schools and educators work together to help build the community? It's that old adage of it takes a village, right? You
Absolutely.
have a child, and it's everybody's responsibility to bring that child up in the community to reach their fullest potential. It's not just the parents. Of course, they're the first teachers,
Right.
but it's the neighbors, it's the local library, it's the church, it's all of these people that are working together to make sure that child has what they need to grow up happy, successful, fulfilled, all of those things. And so it's
Yeah.
really, yeah, it's just so.
We got 2 ears and we need to listen.
Mm.
We very seldomly listen to anybody about what they're saying, about what they want. I mean, the program that you came into in the center, and every program that I developed, grew from my first encounter at NCAT, doing my work there for our state, was to come in as a presenter.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went back home to Atlanta and thought, okay, this is cool. And then I started getting calls from these principals and folks. Can you come do training? I go, no, I don't want to do no training.
Mm-hmm.
No. But the faculty at NCAT said, yes, I think you should do it. He says, put on that scientific mind of yourself that you have and think about it. We need you. They need you. And so what I did for 2 years is I would come out to a school and do training. But while I'm there, I've absolutely got to have an opportunity to have a meal with some at-risk boys.
Mm.
But let me tell you about the boys I want to have lunch with. I want to have a lunch with that boy who lives deep in poverty, don't know a father image, but he comes to school every day and he makes A's and B's, because he and I need to have a talk. And from that kid, not just one, but over a couple of years, 120 so of them, I asked the same question and I took notes. Your teachers are having a struggle reaching kids who look like us.
Mm-hmm.
I want your advice about what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would listen and I would take notes. This whole notion about there's something about books that we got to have. That was the stimulus for the Boys and Books program.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And other programs that I've put together over the years. So we got to listen to the folks. At this particular point, is America ready to listen to what Black parents and Black students are saying that they really want? Well, there's a whole lot of noise in the system right at this moment. There's a whole lot of chatter going on. There's a whole lot of trauma going on.
Mm-hmm.
So can you actually take a message, embed it in trauma, in noise, and then later on pull it out and do something with it? Boy, it will be interesting to see. Typically, the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. After the trauma, the noise system, the level of communication goes down, and there's nothing to resurrect out of it. Because we're being reactionary at this time, not proactive about what it is that we want to do for our nation.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the thing that I think you and I think are on one accord with. We have a relationship.
Yeah.
It didn't start yesterday.
Mm-mm.
We're getting up there, girl.
I know. It's been a while. You remember when I had, brown hair and, all of that, no glasses.
We've been together for a bit, and we can listen to each other, and we could talk about each other, and we could forecast a little bit about what it is that we believe is necessary to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Go forth, to go out there and do some good work and believe in each other and trust in each other, because we have a foundation for doing this,
Right.
That kind of thing. And that's where I think we've got to get to. We can use this opportunity now to put a seed down, but it's putting a seed down in the midst of a hurricane.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing.
The other thing you and I have talked about is, enduring friendships like ours, and that might not look like what people think a
Yeah.
friendship would look like.
Yeah.
I always kind of refer to a non-human example. You see the hippo that's friends with the turtle, and you're like, oh, how did the hippo and the turtle get in the same room, and how are they now friends for life? And so, just interesting. Oh, and in Maisie, yeah. There's these unique friendships that happen because there's conversation.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks have told me, well, now is not the time to celebrate those friendships, and now is not the time to bring that out because there is too much trauma and angst. And I'm like, but we need to lift each other up, and we need to see examples of people who truly care for each other, no matter what the color, ethnicity, religion, political affiliation, any of those things.
I won't say a name because, but I've got a friend that I grew up with. He is a white male, and his pop was a physician. Mm-hmm. Everybody in his family went to medical school except for him. He just wanted to grow up and have a little restaurant down on the beach. That's all he wanted. That was it. And he took so much pressure from the whole family. And all these years, we stayed in contact. We always stay in contact. We're friends, man. This is life. Mm-hmm. And he told me it took all these years, about 8 years ago, he said, on a phone call, he said, I took all that pressure from my folks all these years, but you're always in my corner. This is interesting that a black man was in my corner fighting,
Right.
And I said, brother, listen, I'm always going to be in your corner. It's got nothing to do with my skin color. It's got nothing to do with your skin color. We're friends, Mm-hmm. And I understand. And you were there rooting for me. Go to college, do your thing. It can happen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'd come home from a break. Yeah, we had time together. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So it's magical what we're going through at this particular time. Yeah, there are some friendships that are long lasting. But where do we have a place to really talk about those and to showcase those?
Mm-hmm.
There isn't this place that we can go into the multicultural friendship channel.
Right.
And hear friends talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That kind of thing. There isn't the magazine. There. I haven't looked around all the web, but I don't think there's that place up there. That really does it. And I, and I'm glad that you brought this up because I'm glad that you brought it up. You're one of the advisors to a project where we are beginning to think through how we actually accumulate these stories and put them out there, not just for now, but forever. So that people, not just friendships of adults, but they're friendships of some youngsters, young kids who are going through life at this particular moment who are saying, hold on a minute, and I love my buddy. And let me tell you why. Okay.
Right.
And yet when they're young, they don't see color in the way we do when we become adults.
Right.
They something else. And then some of us, though, we see color. You accept me as a black man, but it hurts my heart when I walk into a group of teachers and I might be the only black person in the whole room. And a teacher goes, you are so cool. I don't see you as a black man. No, I want you to see me as a black man.
Right.
I want you to appreciate me, period.
Right.
I happen to be a man with black skin.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's part of who I am. So relationships need to be celebrated, and we need to have some places out there, multiple places out there in our literature, in books, in everything else that we're doing and reading and thinking about. We need to see images of people talking to each other.
Yes.
Different people, not just on a movie now and then, where we got a white actor and a black actor talking and doing something in fantasy mode, but in reality, the world needs to see this exchange that we're having now. And that's the beautiful thing about the mediums that we have, you know.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. I'd like to see if anybody who's listening through our many mediums has any questions for Dr. Johnson. I know Christina says that we have to learn to appreciate our differences, and so right on, you know, and the differences are what make us, you know, that makes us who we are. It makes us our unique selves, but it's also so interesting to me when I hear someone's story, like how did you become the director of a library? And I tell my story, and they're like, wow, that's really interesting. Or they say, that inspires me. But just to learn about different people's stories, how they got to where they did. We all have obstacles, but I'm learning that one of the obstacles I didn't have was the color of my skin. Mm-hmm. And that's, you know, that's really an aha moment for me at this time, is that I didn't have to worry about opening any doors. They were opened for me.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to learn about people's stories. And, you know, again, you know, I lost my father very young. That was an obstacle, but it wasn't the same as what my Black and brown neighbors and friends and colleagues have had to endure.
There's some structural things out in the communities all the way, and that's going to happen forever. But those friendships, those bonds between individuals, you know, I look back and I think back about this. I've been asked this question. Well, how do you endure this? What happened in your life to make it possible for you to be still living now? Okay, you know, that kind of thing. And you went through a whole lot. And I go, oh yeah, I went through a whole lot. We all go through a whole lot. But what was it all about? You know, I was just blessed to be born in Florida and grew up in a small beach town. Okay, a beach town on the east coast of Florida. And at that time, you know, in the early to the middle and late 50s, a whole lot of Black people lived on the East Coast, you know, in small little beach towns. Mary McLeod Bethune created a college in Daytona Beach, a beach town. Okay.
Is that where you're from, Daytona Beach?
I grew up in a town just south of there called New Smyrna Beach. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
My father was in the Air Force and born in Tampa, but Mom said no. She found a little sleepy beach town that she thought this would work. This would work. Why did she find this little sleepy beach town? I think when she visited, it must have been a weekend, and when she was there at the beach, she was probably just amazed by the fact that there were thousands of Black people on the beach. Okay. So in my life, I saw thousands of Black people on the beach, many of them from HBCUs from across the South, you know.
Right.
You know what I mean? So highly educated folks, you know, and some of them were working in some places where you didn't think about it until today. There's that movie Hidden Figures. I think. Well, there were some Black people working down at NASA. Cape Kennedy is what it was called, Cape Canaveral, when I was a kid. Cocoa Beach. Cocoa Beach was 40 minutes from where I lived.
Yeah.
I always had great teachers in my community, you know, who were more than qualified. You know, having a man with a master's degree in physics teaching math.
Right.
You know, those are the kind of things that you saw growing up. But to be embraced by people in a small community, it's, I think, you know, how I got through it. You know, the world was, there were things happening in the world, but in our small community, we were sort of insulated from all the crap that was happening. And then had all these great role models all the time, coming and going.
Yeah. And then, you know, for me, it was complete opposite. I grew up in a family where, you know, we were very much, you know, only associated with white Catholic folks. So it wasn't until college for me that all of a sudden I went, wow, there's like all kinds of people, because they weren't in my church. My father wasn't letting them in the door. Right. So it's just really, really interesting to see that part of people's stories. Like, what biases do you have? What do you learn? What can you overcome? Even now as adults, we're still learning, you know?
And I think this is the part, I mean, we do the reverse. You know, when we get kids in front of us, we go straight to content and strategy. But what we forget to do is the story.
Right.
You know, what's the story here? You know, my why and my reasons. And I think if we go that way, put story there, and even in our relationships with each other, boy meets girl.
Right.
What do you do for a living? And I
Mm-hmm.
go, when my daughters were doing that kind of thing, I go, I don't want to care. I could care less at this particular age. Here's my interview.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your relationship with your mama.
Right. Right. Right.
What did you give her for her birthday? And if they say nothing and nothing, then you go, well, why? And then I just want you to listen. And based on that, you can then tell me whether or not you want to continue dating this person or not.
Right.
Get the story first before you go into the long-term plans.
Well, and that's why I love this format of having a community conversation, of having people weigh in and talk, and sharing resources. The library is bringing Dr. Kendi in on July 20th. We've been hosting diversity dialogues under the umbrella, The Elephant We Don't See. And so I think it's through these conversations and through understanding each other's stories that we're going to start to see movement. Because if we don't talk to each other, we're not going to know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, for me, the bottom line.
I think that's it. I mean, there's no magic in all of this. We've made it so complex. It's ultimately about a relationship that a teacher or an educator has with a young person, through the public library, through the classroom, or through a mentoring program, or even there at church. Whatever. It's really solely about a relationship. The quality of that relationship will go a long way in life, and it's there. It's about exposure to literacy. Okay. About your people. About your people. If we were way out in Star Trek land, when Kirk was with his people,
right.
He would talk about his people. He wouldn't go, my black people, my Indian person, or this. These are my people, okay?
Right.
And they represent my planet, period. And then they would go and have an adventure on some other planet, and we kind of go, we don't know what those other people, what they're about. And he would say, but as a people, we know what we're about. You know what I mean? And we're not there. We still got to put these qualifiers. The black people, the Indian people, the Mexican people, the white people, the Hispanic people. We're on one rock. It's amazing. It's a rock.
Yeah.
There are billions of other rocks out there. One day, maybe this rock will be threatened and really, like one of those movies, there's a bigger rock coming at us.
Right.
Maybe then we'll wake up and go, this is our planet.
Right.
This is our space.
Right.
Our people are in danger. Our people are in danger. Rather than those people over there,
Yeah.
We separate ourselves so much because we forget about our stories.
Yes. I love that. Well, I think that's a perfect way to end. I don't see any questions coming in through the queue. There's some information up there on how to register for the Ibram Kendi event, how to be an anti-racist, if you're interested in that. But if you just want to go to pgcmls.info, our website has books on anti-racism. We have things on a Heritage Hub, which talks about all different cultures and people. There's great stories. And the more we learn about each other and the more we educate each other, and share our stories, I think that's where, as you say, the magic's going to happen.
That's really where it is. I mean, someone in the comment talked about an unlikely friendship. I remember when I settled into North Carolina, one of the faculty at NCAT says, there's a story about a relationship you as a black man gotta know. And it was a story about C.P. Ellis and Ann Atwelder. C.P. Ellis was in the Klan, and Ann was a black domestic. And at the time here in Durham, they were forced into a situation where they had to work together to solve a community problem. Okay. Make a long story short, and this is something that everybody needs to hear. Long story short, the thing that really brought them together was when Anne went out of her way to do something to comfort his kid, who was a special needs kid.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed their whole trajectory about what they were to each other. It was a conversation that they had one evening that said, we might never grow to love each other, but whatever we do, we need to do it for our babies.
Right.
You know?
And that's the truth right there. Let's start now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I wish I could hug your neck because you know how much I love you.
We're good.
But have a great evening. And thanks for everyone who joined us and for your lovely comments. We appreciate it. And we'll see you back here next week.
Thank you, Roberta.
Bye.